Hi guys, it's Lauren. Um, well, I'm not pregnant anymore, so this isn't my 39-week update, nor is it my 40-week update. Um, I had Emery, so I guess this would be my labor and delivery story. And let's see, I guess I'm going to talk about a few things as a first-time mom that has helped me out. And Emery's 3 days old now, so just little things that have helped me since the birth. And then I'm going to show you her. We just got back from her pediatric appointment. It went well. We have to go back tomorrow, but I'll explain all that later. So, okay. Let's see what happened. On June 9th at 4 p.m., I was 39 weeks, 3 days? 3 days? Yeah. 39 weeks, 3 days. I decided to go ahead and take castor oil. Pretty much, I had the mindset if the castor oil worked, I would go into labor. If it didn't, then it didn't. The baby's only going to come when she wants to come. So, yeah, I took castor oil at 4 p.m. on the 9th, and it did nothing for me. No contractions, no laxative effects, nothing. And so I was just like, well, I guess she's not ready. So I went to bed, and I woke up on the 10th around 2 o'clock feeling some pains. So I don't know if the castor oil maybe kicked the contractions, up a notch to start or what, or maybe my body was just ready to go on the 10th. I don't know, but I can't really say if castor oil really works because from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. the next day, it did nothing for me. So, anyways, so at 2 a.m. I woke up with some, a little bit of cramping in my pelvic area and hip area. And I wondered maybe possibly if it was contractions. And so, like, every time I would feel the cramp, I would, check my stomach and see if it would tighten, and it would tighten. And it wasn't painful yet. It was just kind of like a menstrual cramp, pretty much. And it's weird because it did, build up and then go away. And then it would build up and then go away. So I definitely could feel the difference between a Braxton Hicks contraction and a contraction. So I decided to start timing them around 2:15 because between 2 and 2:15 I couldn't, sleep. And they were coming 2 minutes apart. And I was just like, no way. So I went to the bathroom and, just continued timing them, and they slowly started getting a little bit worse. It felt just like a lot of pressure in my pelvic area. And, but I didn't feel any pain in my stomach. No, like, when my stomach would tighten, I didn't get any, like, pain anywhere else. Everything was all in my hips and pelvic area. And so I decided to take a shower to see if maybe they would, go away, and they didn't. They still came like anywhere from a minute 30 seconds to 2 minutes apart, and they were lasting anywhere from 45 seconds to 50 seconds long. So I wasn't getting much of a break in between those contractions. And let's see, after I got out of that shower, they started getting a little bit worse, and I decided to go ahead and wake up my mom. I didn't wake up my husband because he had work that day, and I didn't want him to call in work and start, possibly his paternity leave for 10 days if I wasn't going to get admitted to the hospital. I didn't want to go to the hospital and find out that I wasn't going to get admitted and he stayed home for nothing. So I decided just to go ahead and let him sleep. So let's see, 2:30, so 3:30 I went and I woke up my mom and I said, hey, I'm getting contractions and they're kind of getting bad. And by now they were to the point where I really had to kind of breathe through them. But I was almost kind of laughing because even though they hurt, I was just like, oh my gosh, I kind of think this is it. You know, this is definitely the early start of labor. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. They're 2 minutes apart for an hour. I guess I'm just going to call labor and delivery and see what they said. So I decided to call labor and delivery, and they told me to wait 1 more hour. And if they didn't go away, then to come on in and they'll check me. And I was like, all right, that sucks. But now they were kind of getting more painful. I was bouncing on my yoga ball. I was doing everything. It was the weirdest sensation of pain. Every time I would get a contraction, it wasn't like the tightening feeling. It felt like, seriously, her head was just getting lower and lower, and my hips were starting to, I don't know, like, kind of rip apart. But it wasn't, it was painful. It was probably like a 5 or a 6 pain scale on 1 to 10. But I definitely could feel just like her head lowering, getting lower and lower, and just getting deeper and deeper into the canal. So that was what I was feeling as for a contraction. Let's see. So I decided to go ahead. I was just like, go ahead and go back to sleep, Mom. I'm just going to go lay down and count them for another hour. And I counted them for another hour. And by then, the pain shot up to about an 8. Or 7 or 8. And now I really had to breathe through them. And they were coming a minute, 20 seconds to 2 minutes along, up far apart. And they were anywhere from 50 seconds to a minute long. And the only thing that really would help with the pelvic pressure and that kind of pain was to lean up against the wall and with my hands, and then push my butt and my hips up against, the other wall. I have like a hallway kind of, and just put as much pressure up against my hips as I could, as the contraction was starting and going. And I really had to breathe. Breathing, I'd never took any Lamaze classes or birthing classes. Breathing definitely helps, but it is so annoying because you just want to hold your breath and it just hurts. And so I decided to go ahead and call labor and delivery. Told them I was coming in because they hadn't went away, and they were actually growing more painful and coming a little bit faster. And by now, we're getting everything together. I had seriously like 30 seconds in between a contraction to run and grab all my hospital bag stuff and make sure I had everything. And once the contraction would hit, I would go up against the wall and put pressure on my hips. Once it subsided, I'd run and go do other stuff as fast as I could before the other contraction hit. Oh, it was crazy. The morning was crazy. Then I decided to wake up my husband because he had to go to work anyways, and I told him that I was heading to the hospital and that I would call him and let him know if he needed to come or not, but just to go ahead and go to work, and if I did get admitted, then he can go ahead and start his paternity leave. But I didn't think I was going to get admitted, honestly. I just thought it was too good to be true. Anyways, so I went to the hospital, and now the pain was getting really bad. Like, it was hurting so bad in my hips and my pelvic area. I could not labor sitting down for the life of me, or laying down. I had to bend over like the bed and just breathe through it as much as I could. And my mom would try to massage the back of my hips, and it was hurting so bad. I wasn't one of those screamers or people who you see on TV. I was very quiet. I was trying to focus mainly on getting through the pain. So I don't know. I think I did very, very well at laboring through all that pain. So, and I was very nice. I pleased and thank you to all the nurses, even though I was in so much pain. So anyways, so I got to the hospital, and they made me lay down so they can monitor her heart rate and the contractions, and that was torture. It hurt so bad to labor laying down. But they did that for an hour, and her heart rate was okay throughout each contraction. The contractions were moderately high for contractions going, so they were happy to see that. And when she checked me, she said I was only 1 centimeter and 25% effaced. Or, no, 1.5 centimeters and 100% effaced. So she says I was very good on, that's great that I was completely thinned out. But I'd only gained 0.5 centimeter since my last appointment on 38 weeks. And I was so upset because the contractions were right on top of each other. They were hurting me, and I was so frustrated. But she told me to come back in 2 hours just to walk around and labor, walking around the hospital, or I can go home. But because I was 100% effaced, she said that it probably could, go by a little quick. So I was like, all right. So I decided to go home and labor for those 2 hours, just so I could take a shower, and because walking was impossible. I could not walk. Every time I get a contraction, I had to hold on to something and try to put as much pressure on my hips as I could. My mom was grabbing my hips and pushing on them as I was pushing into her and holding onto the rail or something as a contraction came. It was so painful. It was like a 10 now. And I had 2 hours to kill before I had to come back. So I went home, I got in the shower. The shower helped tiny bit. It was still hurting. And I got out. I hadn't eaten anything. It was about 7:30 by then in the morning. I hadn't eaten anything. I wasn't hungry. My mom wanted me to eat, though. She made me this egg sandwich. I couldn't even eat it. I took 2 bites of it, and the contractions were so painful and so right on top of each other that I just couldn't do anything. I would lay down or lay over my bed, kind of on it, and on my yoga ball, trying to roll my hips as much as I could. And by now I was getting this intense pressure. I could literally feel her lowering and lowering. Oh, and by the way, she said I was at a -1 station. If I can find a picture, I'll put the picture up. Yeah, so she was very low. So she said her head was right there. So anyways, I labored at home for those 2 hours. It was bad. It went from 10 pain to 15 pain on a scale to 1 to 10. I was in so much pain. I did not know what I was going to do. And it wasn't even in my stomach. It was all in my hips and in my pelvic area. And when we got back to the hospital, or when we were driving to the hospital, it's about a 20-30 minute drive, I started to feel pushy. My body was starting to push, and I was just oh my gosh. Every time I get a contraction, because of that, I could feel her just going down more. I don't know what it is. My body just wanted me to push, and so I would kind of give into the push a little bit. I didn't want to try to push too much, and that would relieve some of the pain just a tiny bit. But I was just oh my gosh, everything's going by really fast. So I got to the hospital, and by now it's 9:15, and she checks me, and she says I'm 5 centimeters. So in 2 hours, I went from 1.5 centimeters to 5 centimeters. And she said the baby's head was right there, and she was going to admit me, and they just had to get a labor room together for me. I told her I wanted my epidural right away, and she laughed, and she said, okay. She's we just need to get your IVs in and your blood work back, and you can have your epidural. And I said, okay. So I had to wait for, I think, an hour for the labor room to get together. It was pretty busy. There was a lot of babies being born that day. And by now, I was in full-blown, every contraction I had, my body was involuntarily pushing. I had to try so... Now I was at the point where trying not to breathe... I was trying to breathe through my contractions, but now I was at the point where I had to really focus on not letting my body push through the contraction. And I was so scared because I was only 5 centimeters, and I was just I thought you don't feel that pushing feeling until 9 or 10 centimeters. And I was really afraid I was not going to get my epidural. I did not want to do this naturally, without an epidural. I wanted medication. So let's see. So we finally get into the labor room, and they're doing my paperwork, and they're talking to me and asking me questions, and I'm trying to answer them. I can't. It's so hard to focus on trying to breathe and not push the contraction and talk to them at the same time. They did my blood work, and they put the IVs in me, and they wanted me to lay down, and I told them I couldn't. So I had to stand up and labor over a table, as they were, working around me and stuff. And by now, it's gonna sound really gross, but with each contraction, because my body was kind of pushing, I didn't want to let them know I was pushing either, because I wanted that epidural. I was afraid they were gonna check me, and I was gonna be like a 10 or something and say, oh, too late. But each time my body would push through the contraction, I could just feel like the blood like running down my legs, and they had to put like a puppy pad underneath me. And it was horrible. Like, those contractions were so horrible, and I was just like, when is the epidural going to be here? And they're like, it can take 20 to 30 minutes for your blood work to come back. And it was torture. The anesthesiologist was in my room. He was pretty much just there. It was like a tease, and he said he was just waiting for my paperwork to come back. It was horrible trying to wait for it, but I was quiet, and my mom had stepped out to call Matt and let him know to head to the hospital like right now, because it seemed like everything was going by very fast. And it was going by really fast. Like, I was only there for like an hour or two. I think it was like 11 now, so 2 hours. And Matt finally got there, and my mom was showing him how to massage my hips through each contraction. And he was massaging my hips, and I had another contraction, and I was trying so hard not to push, and I pushed a little bit, and blah, my water broke right on his shoes, his brand new shoes. He just got them, and they broke all over them. I felt so bad, and he just laughed. But what can you do? But he was very sweet, and now I was starting to get really scared because my body was really pushing, and like 2 minutes before the blood work came back to say, saying that I could get the epidural, I was having another contraction, and I finally gave in, and I told my nurse, and I was just like, my body is pushing, I can't stop the push. And she's like, you feel pushing? And I was like, yes, I'm pushing, I don't know why I'm pushing. And she's like, no, you can't push. She's like, let me check you. And so she checked me as I was standing up, and she's like, okay, you're 8 centimeters. And finally, when she said 8 centimeters, the blood work came back, and they're like, okay, you can get that epidural. All you got to do is just sit down on the bed. And I was just like, I can't sit down, because I was having contractions right on top of each other. So, but they made me sit down, and it was horrible sitting down and having a contraction. I was pushing like on the bed. It was so much pressure, and I was holding on to Matt. He was right in front of me, and I was holding on to him, and I was trying to breathe. And I would have a contraction, and he can see my face, and he would quietly whisper, don't push, don't push. And the epidural guy was taking forever, it seemed like, but he was just being really careful to, make sure my back and spine was all, good and stuff. And it didn't hurt at all, the epidural. There was a little sting and a burn from, I think it's from something, but after that, it was just, you don't even feel the epidural because of the contractions. That's all I got to say about that. So finally he got it in, and he made me lay down, and I was just like, no, because the epidural didn't kick in for like 10-15 minutes, and so I was still feeling my contraction. And so now I was laying on the bed, and each contraction I had, I was pushing now. Like, I could not help it. I was literally pushing. I thought she was going to be born before the epidural kicked in. And then finally it kicked in, and I would still feel the pressure from the contraction, and then it just kind of tapered off. And then once I felt okay, I updated my Facebook status saying that, hey, I was at the hospital, I was 8 centimeters, and pretty much just waiting for Emery to be born. I was texting a couple of people to let them know I was at the hospital, because I didn't have time to text anyone or call anyone. And then I decided to go ahead and call my best friend and let her know the story of, what happened, like what I'm telling you guys now, from 2:15 this morning to now. And it was only like, I think 11:30 or 11:45 in the morning. And, I was telling her that I was 8 centimeters, I finally got my epidural, and I was just talking to her, and then all of a sudden the nurse, she's looking, kind of checking me down there, and she puts the catheter in, and she's like, she's like, can we do 3 practice pushes? And I was like, practice pushes? I was like, really already? I was like, okay, sure. And so I did three 10-second practice pushes to see. I thought she wanted to see how well I would do pushing now that I was completely numb from the epidural. So I was like, sure. And I was like pushing and talking to my friend Mackenzie on the phone. And then all of a sudden, people are coming in with all the bassinet and the labor stuff for the birth of the baby. And then the doctor comes in and she sits down and she checks me and she's like, okay, it's time to push. You're 10 centimeters. And I was just like, already? Really? Are you serious? And I was like, Mackenzie, let me call you back. I'm about to push. And so I pushed. It was at 12:13 when I started the actual pushes. I did 3 pushes and she was out at 12:16 p.m. on June 10th, 2011. It was very surreal. They placed her on my chest. Actually, they kind of placed her on my stomach. And I just remember just looking up at Matt, and he looked at me, and then we both looked at her, and we just laughed. We didn't cry. We're not big criers. I looked over at my mom. My mom was crying, but it just was so surreal. Like, I could not believe that she was on me. She didn't even have that much like gunky stuff on her or anything. She pretty much came out clean. She did a small little cry, and then they put her right on my chest to kind of breastfeed, and she just looked up at me, and then I looked down at her, and it was love at first sight. And I did tear. I got, at the very last second, a 2nd-degree tear. So that's been a little hard. So, yeah. Then I find out, since I'm O negative, that Emery, is A negative, and that we're ABO incompatible or something. So she's on jaundice alert, and she had to have a lot of blood drawn, and it's just a little problem that we have to pass. But we're taking care of it. I only had to stay at the hospital for 24 hours. Well, actually, I think 28 hours we stayed. And then we got to go home on Saturday. And her first night, or for her first day, she was really good. Her first night, she was really good. She breastfeeds great. My milk is finally in, so that's cool. And her baby appointment today went well enough. She doesn't like to be naked, and they made her get all naked so they can check her weight. She's down 5 ounces from birth. She was 6 pounds 7 ounces, 20 inches long. So now she's 6 ounces, or 6 pounds 2 ounces, but which is normal. Now that my milk's in, she should be gaining more weight. I have another baby appointment tomorrow so they can check her weight and check her jaundice. But yeah, so that is my labor and delivery story. I don't know what it is. It's been 3 days, but I don't have much of an appetite. But I know you do need to eat stuff. So I'm only a first-time mom, but my advice for you guys is to have a snack by your bedside if you're breastfeeding, because it takes a lot out of you. I always have a water bottle filled, and I like to eat Costco's trail mix, and it has peanuts, M&Ms, raisins, almonds, and cashews. It is the best trail mix you'll ever eat, and it's from Costco, and I'm all out of it now, and I need to go buy some more, and it definitely helps. For my 2nd-degree tear, I was given this Perry bottle, and you just fill it up with like lukewarm water, and you squirt it down there, and then you just take a toilet paper and you pat dry. That's been helping me. I didn't bleed much, which is good. All the doctors would joke around saying that there's a midwife tale that redheads bleed a lot, but I guess I broke that, and because I didn't bleed very much. Then they give you Dermoplast. If the hospital does not give you Dermoplast and you do tear, I recommend you go buy some, because it numbs the heck out of it, and it cools it down, and it does not hurt. And then I'm not sure if all hospitals do this, and I'm not sure if you can get this at a store or something, but it's called Epifoam, and it helps with swelling, and it cools down everything. I also have Tux pads that I sometimes will line to cool everything down, but I don't use it too much. It's just like witch hazel, but that's nice. Oh, and last but not least, it's kind of gross, but Collis, or any generic stool softener brand. Just, that's all I gotta say. And other than that, those are my tips for you. I'm only a first-time mom, so, you know, I'm still learning as I go. I have not weighed myself since I've had her, and I believe I was only 155 when I had her, and I started out at 127. So I'm curious to see how much I weigh. I don't have a scale yet. Also, to help with my uterus to go down and my muscles to stay kind of intact, I have a postpartum band that I put on right after birth, and that's definitely helped flatten out my stomach a lot. I'm still swollen, but it's definitely helped. So I'm going to show you guys my belly, and then I'm going to show you Emery, and then I'm going to go ahead and go, because it's already 26 and a half minutes long. So, alright, I'm going to show you my belly. So, I have the band on right now, and it just looks like this. Oh, she's waking up. I didn't get any stretch marks, so that's good. It's still going down the uteruses. I'm a little swollen, water weight. Still have this little band. But yeah, no stretch marks or anything. I was very pleased with myself. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get her, and then we're gonna go. And there she is. She doesn't have dark red hair like me. Can't tell if it's going to be strawberry blonde or not. It has a reddish tint to it, but it kind of looks golden blonde with a little hint of red in it. So there she is. She's kind of yellow still because she has jaundice, but she's super cute, and everyone is in love with her. And she sleeps great. Last night we slept, I believe, 4.5 hours or 3.5 hours straight after feeding. But yeah. Alright guys, I will probably update next week or in 2 weeks. So those of you who are pregnant, congratulations, and it's not too long before you have them, and it's so exciting when you finally do. And those who have followed me through this pregnancy, thank you for following me and all the wonderful comments and messages. I'm going to try to keep up with updates as much as I can. And if you guys would like to see anything, a new video, any kind of video, just let me know and I will try to make it. So yeah. Alright, bye guys.